Welcome to episode 3 in our presentation of the Choter by the Choter, Craig Wen, here on the Iowa blog. In our last episode, we talked about how Iowa had confirmed what I have long recognized to be true, which is that, you get comfortable there now, Wookie, that when Elia and I arrive on the Temple Mount on the 1st of Abib in 2030, we will not have to endure those hideous Islamic scars that currently tarnish the most important place on earth. They will be destroyed such that our only backdrop is going to be a replica of the tent of the witness that existed during the Exodus, which will serve as our home during this period. We realized this in the preceding statement, which I'll reprise again so that we're moving forward in context. It reads, "They will not be allowed to continue to perpetrate evil. They will not always be so harmful and troublesome, nor as misleading. And so they will not continue to mar, to blemish, or corrupt anything associated with my set-apart mountain." Well, this actually means that far more than the hideous religious trophies that currently sit atop the Temple Mount, including the Dome of the Rock, the Dome to the Spirits, and the Alaska Mosque, are not only going to be destroyed, but beyond that, things like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre will be gone as well. All traces of religiosity, even the exemplars of politics, will be cleared away so that we are able to present the truth without being surrounded by the blemishes, mars, and corruptions that man has piled on top of the truth for these many centuries. And as a result, when we arrive, the land of Israel will once again be full of information which can be known about Yahweh, just as the waters fill the sea. And this will begin, of course, as Elia and I began our witness on behalf of Yahweh and on behalf of Israel during the last 3.5 years of the time of Jacob's troubles, beginning on the 1st of Abib, and which will be in 2030. Yahweh is going to go much further than we are capable of going. And he is going to release a torrent of water underneath the Temple Mount to cleanse it and to cleanse the remaining remnant of Israel and to purge the earth of all of the religious and political and militant scum that have preceded this moment. So that is the purpose of what Yeshayah was inspired to convey by way of Yahweh in 11:9. So as we proceed, we recognize that something has changed, and that is that over the past year, I have been able to speak directly to God's people, and I have made it clear that the Islamic boils and scars on the Temple Mount, known as the Dome of the Rock, and Alaska Mosque, will be raised. And by raised, I mean flattened, not going upward. Yes, the producer says whoop whoop to that. It's really one of the great crying shames of Jewish history that first the Islamic scars were put there as trophies to the hideousness of Islam. You see, the inspiration for them was the most embarrassing moment in all of Muhammad's life. in terms of just utter stupidity, as he claimed that he flew on a winged ass from Cobbaville, which was Petra at the time, up to Jerusalem, a city whose name he didn't know, to meet in a temple that he didn't know had been destroyed with the Jewish bigwigs who he didn't know were long dead, to lead them in an Islamic prayer of prostration, which, of course, they would never have done. And the Alaska Mosque has been built there to commemorate that, as has the Dome of the Rock. And all Israel really had to do is to expose the stupidity of the Islamic claims to why these buildings were erected, to cause the world to recognize they should not be there. And then when Moshe Dayan led victorious Jewish armed forces in the obliteration of the Muslims who had come to do as Muslims and progressives are chanting today, wipe out Israel from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a chant for Jewish genocide. And when they had turned back the threat in 1967 with the 6 Days War, Moshe Dayan stood on top of the Temple Mount, and he had all the weapons at his disposal to eliminate these two hideous scars, and yet he didn't do it. And far worse, they were turned over to the jurisdiction of Jordan, which was one of the great mistakes in all of Israeli history, and served as the inspiration for so many more terrorist attacks on Israel, and will continue to serve as inspiration for Islamic terrorist attacks on Israel, so long as those buildings exist. But as I have shared with you, they will be destroyed. I don't know if I get the honor, Elia gets the honor, or Yahweh sees to it before our arrival, but nonetheless, they will be gone. Such that when the Choter, serving as the Adam Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is productive and fruitful, offers his Bashar body as a witness to be bludgeoned by the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan on the day of the herald, Yom Teruah, on the morning of the Shabbat of September 24th, 2033. There will be no remaining trace of Hasatan's religious infrastructure, and that this corporeal manifestation of Satan that will lash out at me for the last time will be the last time Satan is seen on earth. His shrines will all be removed, and his blow against me will seal his fate, because it will restore the mortal remnant of Yisrael, and in so doing, Yom Kippurim, the homecoming, is assured. And when Yahweh and Dod return, Satan will be no more. And so it is his last blow, one that will dispatch his sorry soul to Sheol. Now, the Choter must stand out, obviously, and be noticed to succeed. That's why he is distinguished by the name meaning to stand out and be noticed, the Yeshe name. He has to garner Israel's attention, such that God's people radically change their mindset towards most everything, and particularly Yahweh and Dod, the Moed Mikre and the Bereth covenant. And they will, of course, have to change their mindset also in identifying their actual enemy, which is not Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran. It's Islam. Their foe is religious. And so there will be a Nesh sign and a banner that will be lifted up and put on display for all to see. And in this way, the Choter will stand present, appointed, and sustained before the people of Israel with a comprehensive explanation of what he knows and why he has earned the right to garner the attention of God's people. And as a result, we are now producing, really, the Yahweh blog is the introduction to all of this. It is the means to begin this process of familiarizing Yisrael with the Choter. Not for the Choter's benefit, for Israel's benefit, for the benefit of Yehudim. And indeed, also for the benefit of Yahweh and for Dod. Because Yahweh and Dod want Yisrael to be reacquainted with their names, their identity, their nature, their purpose, what they're offering, what they expect in return. Because it is only when these things are known that there can be a homecoming and family reunion. So the Yahweh blog exists for this purpose. And it's available, as you know, here on Facebook. It's also available on YouTube and Rumble, and we can occasionally now share it on X, although once X was besieged by the most recent series of severe hackings, it has been less receptive. Now, as we continue in Yeshaya, Isaiah chapter 11, which is the principal chapter introducing the Choter to God's people, we read, "And it will occur, it will actually happen, in that day, which is his time, that the root which anchors and nourishes Yeshe, this one who stands out, such that he is noticed, who shows the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, through the Nesh, through this sign and banner, through this standard which is lifted up as a signal. It's from Najash, which speaks of something that is put on full display and offered from above. You are watching the Nesh now. Should you go to yadaya.com, you would be reading the Nesh. You are being given a trailer, if you will, a sneak preview into what Israel and the world will be witnessing beginning in Abib in 2030, just 4.5 years from now. And this is, in fact, precisely what God intended, what the prophet conveyed. We are fulfilling this prophecy in your sight and in your hearing at this very moment. And so, yes, it will occur, and it has occurred, that in this day, his day, that the root which anchors and nourishes Yeshe, the one who stands out now and is becoming noticed, who is committed to showing the way to the benefits of the relationship through this Nesh, this sign, this banner, this standard which is lifted up. He is taking a stand, and he is present and accounted for, Ahmad. He is presenting the means to evaluate the one who is appointed and sustained, providing the means to assess the evidence and make a thoughtful decision for the benefit of the Am, the family, and people. Through him, all ethnicities will have learned what was not previously known about the relationship and they will continue through him to be inquisitive. Darash, they will have inquired about, searched for, investigated, expecting to find a responsible presentation about engaging in the relationship with ongoing implications for them throughout time as they learn all that can be known. And therefore, his restful residence, his place of repose and reflection, his comfortable habitation from this point on, will exist as a reward and as a source of enrichment and empowerment. Yashayah, deliverance is from Yah. Isaiah 11:10. You may not be able to hear the chuckles from the peanut gallery over there, but she likes to say, I told you so in this regard. So let's begin at the beginning before we get to what Giggles is gaggling about. We need to mic the producer. And it will occur in that day, this day, his day, that the Sheresh, the base and the foundation, the very source of the family line, the one who is steadfast and focused, the root of the matter, and Yeshe, the one who stands out and is noticed, the one who draws attention to the very substance of our existence, the one devoted to revealing the way to receive the benefits of the relationship. Through this very nesh, this sign, this banner, the Yahweh blog, these books behind me on the shelf at yadayah.com, all of this is right now taking a stand and is present and accounted for as requested and enabled by the very God of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob, the creator God of the universe, afforded Yahweh's 7 spirits to make this possible as never before, all on behalf of the Am, the family. And it is through him that the 7 spirits of Yahweh are reaching out to every ethnicity on earth, people of many races and places. Some of them for no other purpose than to act as that rod that represents the Choter, a means of discipline, of correction, of pointing out the obvious that the religious and political and conspiratorial are wrong and they need to be chastised. They need to be exposed and condemned. And also on behalf of those who are genuinely darash, inquisitive, open-minded, willing to learn, so that they might know the truth. And of course, with a focus on the most important ethnicity of all, Yehudim. That is why we're here. It's not just to sow the seeds and cultivate them that lead to the most productive possible harvest by sharing the truth with Yisrael and Yehudim, but it's also to communicate to everyone so that to the extent that it is possible, Israelites are protected from those who would do them harm, particularly as we approach the time of Jacob's troubles. So that Israel is warned, and so that by that warning, they also become more receptive to the truth. Darash. And then Yahweh says something that I certainly would not have expected him to say. It's something that he didn't need to say. It is certainly something that is appreciated. But if it were not there, it wouldn't change really anything. Other than it is a it is helpful in a regard. This is a labor of love, and I have devoted every waking hour of this to this mission for the past 24 years of my life. And unlike my predecessors in this role, Moshe and Dod, I have not yet worn out. I'm still invigorated. I'm still excited every day before sunrise to begin afresh, learning and sharing what I have learned with God's people, reintroducing them to Yahweh, the God whose name they erased, and to his beloved Son, our Messiah, the Savior, Dod. But Yahweh knows that my predecessors in this role, particularly Moshe and Dod, finally gave up. I would say gave up maybe is too strong a word, but they ultimately collapsed under the pressure. Trying to awaken and speak the truth to Israel is a very difficult thing to do. Israelites are exceedingly hard-headed. They're set in their ways. They've been belligerent towards God for a very long time. They think they know all of the answers, and yet the most important answer they know nothing about. And we live in a world that is highly politicized and religious, where no matter what you have to say about God, it is resoundingly attacked. And so Yahweh knows that he must offer a restful residence for the man he has chosen to equip to fulfill this mission. And so he is, well, I would say, from an entrepreneurial point of view, dangling that carrot out to the Choter, saying that continue to give it your all. You have 8.5 years more to go. You can do this, because when you're done, you will have known that you gave it your all. We will embrace one another and celebrate all that we have achieved. And then there will be time for a rest, to reflect on all that was accomplished collaboratively. Now, this is because there is something about God that most people just don't seem to get. They want to pray to God. They want to claim all names for God. They want to pretend that God can be known and reached independently and directly. But for the most part, that's not true. God did not go directly to Mitzrayim, Egypt, to rescue his people and to make his presence known. He did it through Moshe. And once the Israelites told God, we don't want to ever hear from you again or see you again, he continued to communicate to them through Moshe and his other prophets. And when Israel was on the brink of extermination from the Philistines for having made a horrendous mistake, which was to reject Yahweh and also reject Shamuel as the final judge, living under the auspices of the Torah, and picked Shaul. And Yahweh chose that he would save Israel through an 8-year-old boy whom he anointed, and to whom he anointed also with his spirit. Name is Dod. We know him today as David. It is through David that he saved Israel, united Israel, brought Israel into Jerusalem. and through whom he not only reflected the full benefits of the Bereth covenant, but enabled them through Pesach, Mitzvah, and Bikurim being collaboratively fulfilled. And it is by Dode's Psalms that we come to know the most profound truth in the world, the greatest discovery in the world, that Dode in fact served to fulfill Passover, unyeasted bread, and firstborn children, so that we could become immortal, perfected, enter God's home as his children, inherit all that he has to give, enabling God to enrich and empower us in the process, so that we are prepared for the Shabuah harvest, which is upcoming, and can be there on Teruah and celebrate the homecoming on Kippurim and camp out with our Heavenly Father forevermore, beginning on Sukkah. And in this way, God would like you to know, and he also reemphasized this through prophets like Chabauk and Hosea, Yirmiah, my beloved Yashaya, Zechariah, Yoel, Malachi, that God does not communicate directly to us. You are not going to, as a person, call out to God in prayer or address him somehow in some religious institution and get a response. God has picked very few men, some women, mostly men, through whom to communicate. Today it's the Choter. And so if you're going to approach Yahweh, if you're going to be included in his covenant family, if you're going to spend eternity in Shamayim, you need to come to the realization that God works through his chosen implements. That's how he communicates to humankind. And that has really been the so from the beginning, and it will continue to be so forevermore, because as we enter happily ever after, Dode returns to his position as our sovereign. He is Elyon, God, in the presence of God. And that shouldn't even be shocking, because all of us are going to be elevated into the seventh dimension and made ever more similar to Yahweh himself. As Yahweh's sons and daughters through the covenant, we are very much like our Maker. This being the case, Yahweh is acknowledging that the last of his witnesses is going to get a vacation when it's all over. And he's saying that it will be well-deserved, because he is calling it a reward. It's a source of enrichment and an empowerment, which means this vacation comes with some stipulations. The reward part sounds really nice. Okay, we're going to have some really nice places to hang out during the millennial Shabbat here on earth, and perhaps in eternity going forward. And that sort of implies that perhaps there would be a residence that would be not too far away from Dode's, which will be the second grandest in the universe, with his father's being the most magnificent of all. And Yahweh, he might even make Dode's better than his. That's just the way he is. So that sounds kind of neat. That's going to be a reward. But when it says enrichment and empowerment, a dignifying gift, a manifestation of power, an attribution of the inheritance, you know what that really means? That's Yahweh being really clever. That means you're just going to continue to work for me, kid. Because Yahweh doesn't, he's going to enrich every covenant member. He's going to empower every covenant member. But by saying that this particular individual in this particular place and time, when this is all over, is going to be uh, offered as a dignifying gift and as a manifestation of God's influence, attribution of his inheritance, it means you're going to continue to work doing what you're doing now. It's just that the audience will be younger members of the covenant family as they are born to the mortal remnant of Israelites during that 1,000 year um, opportunity to experience Sukkah here on earth. So thank you, Yahweh. I appreciate that very much. But you and I both know what that means. So I realize here, and I'm laughing because Yahweh and I have had that kind of relationship really from the beginning. Ours is a very happy relationship. It's a very casual relationship. Yeah, it's formal in the sense of God set the parameters for it, and he enables it, and the mission he has clearly articulated, and it's laid out in great detail here in Yashayah throughout the entire book. But that does not mean that we don't have fun together. That doesn't mean that we don't share laughs together, because we do. And it would also be informative for you to know that I actually have a different relationship than that was experienced by either Moshe or Dod. Moshe, every time there was a problem, ran to Yahweh and did a face plant and expected Yahweh to solve it. I don't do that. I have never fallen on my knees before Yahweh, nor run to Yahweh and say, you got to help me here. I'm being besieged. I can't solve this problem. Not in our nature. I've been given everything I need to prevail, and Yahweh hates it when we fall down or bow down before him. And since God has given us and me everything I need to prevail, it's my job to use what he has offered to do this job. Now, I understand Moshe was in a different spot. He was surrounded by 600,000 malcontent Israelites. And I live here on this beautiful island. You've seen some pictures of it. And so my foes are typically online. And, that's a lot easier. Now, I've received thousands of death threats. Moshe didn't. But all in all, I can understand why Moshe would be in that position and why I'm in a different one. But again, different circumstances. As for Dod, there are times in Dod's writings that we find the same level of comfort, where he just celebrates his relationship with Yahweh. And there are times when Dod gets really bold and say, Yahweh, you need to listen to me on this now. I've got something important to say, and I want you to respond. I would never be that bold. But there are lots of times, too, where Dod and his words perceives or projects his relationship with Yahweh as far more, I'm a wee little man, and he is a great big God. That's true, but it isn't the relationship that I have with Yahweh. I realize that I'm completely useless and incompetent without him, and that my life is unproductive without the seven spirits and without him achieving this mission through me. But it isn't helpful for me to put God on a pedestal and to, almost be in fear of him. The job can't be done that way. I have to have a relationship with Yahweh that is like I do, which is that I certainly admire and respect him. I love him. I'm entertained by him. I'm enlightened by him. I'm enriched by him. I understand our relative differences. I'm navalent compared to the um, extent of the entire universe. But we have to be a team. I have to view him more as a loving father and a supporter, which is one of the ways that he presents himself quite often to us. He says that he's here to serve us, to help us. And I have to view him that way. And I do. I view Yahweh as here to help me help you. And you may think that's overly bold, but it is our reality. And so as I realize that with this statement, that he is overwhelmingly supportive and therefore he is responsible for the results we achieve, I don't think Yahweh could have found a man more devoted to him over this score of years. That doesn't make me perfect, but it means I have honored and fulfilled the mission. And now we find that Yahweh is pleased. And it's just Yahweh's nature. He is going to tell you what he intends to offer and what he thinks about those who have engaged with him. He's, wrote a whole song about Dode David, the 89th Mizmor. He tells you everything you need to know about his perceptions of Dode. And he has said marvelous things about Moshe. And he even said marvelous things about Yeshaya and Shamuel during the darkest moments for them. And it is just God's nature. He's done the same thing for me. This is actually not one of the most expansive declarations of what he thinks of our collaboration together. So I'll just say thank you, Dad. It's an honor. It's a privilege to serve with you on behalf of your people. Now, what follows, the Edonai, my upright one and foundation and pillar of the tabernacle, is being spoken in Yahweh's voice. It therefore is not my Lord. No. Adon is, when it's vocalized that way, is the secondary Hebrew word for Lord. The primary Hebrew word is Baal. Edon, however, is used throughout the Torah to describe the upright pillar of the tabernacle. The very tabernacle that I've shared with you, is a replica, is going to be presented on the Temple Mount during the time that Elia and I are there. And Yahweh wants to make a point that at this time, for the purpose of the Choter, that the Choter is going to be more than a resident within that tabernacle. And so we have to go to the Torah's definition of Edom and appreciate why Yahweh would refer to the Choter, which is what he's talking about throughout Yeshaya 11, would serve as my upright one, the foundation and the pillar of this tabernacle. Because it takes on very special meaning at this particular time. You see, when Elia and I arrive on the Temple Mount and the Islamic scars are removed and this replica of the tent of the restoring witness is erected and serves as our home, God is crediting us, and particularly the Choter, with upholding his covenant family and expanding his covenant family. And you might say, wait a minute, that puts you in a superior position, if you will, to Elia. And yes, it does. Listen, Elia is the greatest orator in God's whole story. To be effective in sarcasm when addressing a damning enemy, particularly when you're going against the entire religious and political establishment of Israel, and you're a single man, armed only with words, requires supreme intellect and great confidence, a very fast processor. It means that Elia, to be effective in his sarcasm, had to know the Canaanite Babylonian religion that was practiced by the Phoenicians at the time of Jezebel, and understood exactly who Asherah, the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of God, the Madonna and Child, was, and who the Lord was. And he was exceedingly effective at chastising the false god known as the Lord, and the false god known as the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God, and the Madonna and Child, for whom Easter is now celebrated and Mary is now worshipped. And he had this entire performance before the religious and political establishment of Israel to condemn religion and politics, orchestrating the slaughter and the subsequent uplifting sacrifice of a bull. He is being brought back for that same purpose. He's being brought back to orchestrate the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. That is his primary purpose. It's why Yahweh used him in that way and is bringing him back for that purpose. He is the master of ceremonies for the most important event of, well, not only this century, but of the past 2,000 years. And he is being brought back to provide the Choter with a divine endorsement. And so it is true that when Elia and I take the stage on the Temple Mount, Elia will be far better known than I am. But it's my job to continue to do as I'm doing. And Elia is going to support what we achieve right to the point of serving as the master of ceremonies for the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah that prepares the adulterous woman that is Yisrael to be betrothed again to the returning Messiah and King, Daud. And so the Choter is at least for this moment in time, and that replica of the tent of the restoring witness, the upright one, securing it and expanding it for God's covenant family.
Leia's going to do the cooking.
Okay, Leah, what did Leah say?
Leia's going to do the cooking.
Leia's going to be cooking in the kitchen. Okay, well, that's good. We're going to eat well. It has been, Wookie says, yes, we do eat well. So it will happen. Well, Wookie says, I'm going to get up for that. So it will happen. It will occur in that day, again during his time, that my upright one will again associate his hand a second time to reacquire, to bring forth, and to redeem the remnant of his family. who remain, and it's going to list a number of places, and I will share those with you in a moment. Yes, it's the second time. I've been here doing this with you for the past 24 years. I'm going to continue doing this for you and with you for as long as I can. Yahweh has affirmed that he is going to bring us home into the spiritual realm on Shabuah, which is September. It's May 22nd of 2026, 7 years before his return. But sometime after the Shabuah harvest, I know that I will be returning to resume this mission. And that I'm going to return to Israel, where I have been before, to reacquaint this surviving remnant of Israel with Yahweh and with Dode so that they can become part of God's family. And so it will be a second time, and for this purpose. And during this time, one of the missions is going to be that we call the remnant of Israel out of a number of places. And I'm going to share that list with you now, and we'll talk a little bit about what those places represent. Of God's family who remain from Asher, which is northern Iran and Iraq. This is where the Israelites, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, were taken during the Assyrian assault on them. From Mitzrayim, from Lower Egypt, Lower Egypt in terms of terrain, near the mouth of Egypt, not up high for the source of the Nile, which is where the children of Israel were enslaved, and Yahweh liberated them once before. Out of Pathros, Upper Egypt. From Cush, which would be from the Arabian Peninsula. Out of Elam, which would be southwestern Iran today. From Shinar, which is Iraq and Babylon, which is where Yehudim were taken and where many stayed to write the Babylonian Talmud. Out of Shamath, Syria. And from the coastlands, the inhabited shores of countries between or surrounded to some extent by large bodies of water, notably, that would be Lebanon, the United States, Canada, Central and South America, Western, Southern and Northern Europe, Turkey, India, New Zealand, Australia, and North and South Africa. These coastlands of the sea, Hayam. Yashaya, salvation is from Yahweh, 11:11. So with the exception of the Hayam, coastlands of the sea, there are very few, if any, acknowledged Jews in these other places. They have, suffered genocide at the hands of Muslims. Most who were killed or either killed or exiled years ago. However, thousands of Jews, to keep their heads attached to their necks, decided to convert to Islam rather than die. And their DNA is still prevalent among Muslims throughout the Middle East. Moreover, this statement is symbolic of reuniting Yisrael with Yehudim, since the 10 tribes of Yisrael were scattered and lost in many of these places 2,700 years ago, while Judah was spared until 70 and 133 CE. The means to Ashaf, this ingathering. On behalf of all ethnicities and Teruah for Israelites, so Shabuah for really everyone, and Teruah for Israelites. By lifting up and bringing forth the Choter's Nesh sign and banner via Yadayah and the Iowa blog on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, et al., is the means to this Ashaf ingathering. It is tied directly into these two harvests, the Teruah Katsir, the Shabuah Katsir, and the Teruah Lakat. Now, should the intent of Yahweh's last statement be literal, just as it is also symbolic, well, here's some food for thought. Recent DNA evidence suggests that there may actually be a substantial population of Jews residing in geographic Babylon, at least on their father's side. This assessment also indicates that these Jews are among the most prominent and prosperous of Muslims. Imagine the utter amazement when Muslims find out that they're actually Jewish. Not all of them. Many of them. Muhammad was Jewish. Therefore, now that we know that Yahweh will be calling Yehudim out of northeastern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, Iran, and Syria, and from throughout ancient Babylon, we can use the dominant male haplogroup, Y DNA, as our guide to assess the percentage of these peoples who are Jewish by race. But first, this disclosure. DNA testing has not been done randomly in the sample we're going to consider. And so the data comes from a small percentage of these people. Further, we're relying exclusively on the dominant male haplogroup and the extrapolations I'm going to share with you. As a result, while the tests are conclusive and I'm going to portray them accurately, it is likely that only those with innate personal curiosity, who are the most open to scientific inquiry among Muslims, which is a tiny little fraction of those corrupted by Allah, would have allowed themselves to be tested. And that is artificially skewing the results by a factor of at least 10 or more. Therefore, in our quest to be reasonable, I'm downgrading the results across these nations by tenfold that I will share with you. So out of Yahweh's list in Yeshaya 11, we might find among Iranian Persians, well, 38% of 81 million of those, so 38% of those that have tested themselves and announced the results show that they're actually Jewish, which is 30.8 million. 38% tested of Iranians tested that they were in fact Jewish of those who were tested. That would be just shy of 31 million. If we were to reduce that tenfold, as I shared previously, which I think is the proper math here, that would mean that there's likely 3 million Jews living in Iran. This shouldn't surprise us, because this is where they were taken and many remained. Iranian Kurds are somewhat open-minded in their willingness to explore their ethnicity. 60% of those who actually took DNA tests and shared the results with us announced that, surprise, surprise, they're Jewish. 6 million Kurds, which would be 6 million in Iranian territories anyway, of whom we have results. That would be 3.6 million, and they're 0.4 million when reduced by tenfold. In Egypt, 21% of those who took the test found out they were Jewish. There's 97 million Egyptians. That means that 20.4 would be indicated, reduced by tenfold. It's 2 million Jews that are in Egypt as either Copt Christians or Muslims. Of Assyrians, 12%, which by the time we do our reductions is 0.02 million. Iraqi Sunni Arab, 64% of 11 million, which would be 0.7 million Jews. Iraqi Shia Persians, 35% who took the spit test found out that they were Jewish. There's 22 million, that's 7.7 million, reduced by tenfold, were 0.8 million Jews. Iraqi Kurds on the other side of the border, where the Turks are trying to perpetrate genocide against them, and now we've got the Islamic State wanting to attack them. 18% of some 5 million people is 0.9 and therefore 0.09 by the time it's reduced tenfold. In Syria, in Saudi Arabia, this is really interesting. In Saudi Arabia, 40% of those who took the DNA spit test found out, guess what? I'm Jewish. India is likely Jewish. So in Saudi Arabia, it's 40% of that found out that they were Jewish. Of 33 million people, that's 13.2 million. Reduce it by tenfold because of the fact that it wasn't an unbiased test. We only have those that were actually curious and open to scientific evaluation. Therefore, 1.3 million Jews. Qatar, the belly of the beast here now, in terms of financing Islamic conquest around the world. 58% of those son of a guns. Boy, that's a bad sign for Jews because there's very few places as belligerent today. Qatar is the ATM of Islamic terrorism. 58%. There's only 2.5 million of them. That's 1.5 million and therefore 0.2 million Jews. United Arab Emirates, 34% of those. 0.1 is the math by the time we do that. Oman, 38%. Would be 0.2 by the time we do the extensions. And Yemen, among the Houthis. You're just not going to believe this. The number. And this is really embarrassing because the Houthis are clearly the clown face of Islam. 70% of those clowns that took the spit test found out they were Jewish. That shouldn't really be a terrible surprise because we know that that Arab converts to Judaism attracted actual Jews to the region, and that they had a huge influence over Islam. The whole story of Tubi and the conversion of the Yemenites to Judaism is one of the most interesting stories as he came upon and conquered Yathrib. One of the great stories that's told in Goddamn Religion. In fact, it's worth reading the book just for that story because Allah plays himself for a fool over Tubi. But anyway, that would be 2 million Jews scattered amongst the Yemenites. Now, it's not fair to call all Yemenites the clowns of face of Islam because the Houthis are just a sect of those living there in Yemen. So, to the degree that these projections are accurate, and when Wookie has done the calibrations to verify that the math was true, Wookie is a whiz at math. Well, he's a whiz nonetheless. Sir Poops a lot is what we call Wookie from time to time. So to the degree these projections are accurate when diminished tenfold for potential bias among the consenting to be tested, only a tiny fraction of these 10 million individuals know that they are Jewish. If more were to know, that would be cathartic due to the anti-Semitic nature of Islam. But nonetheless, after the Muslim conquests, having their forefathers convert to Islam rather than die, most are far too corrupted by the satanic religion of Islam to hear Yahweh's voice. But wouldn't it be wonderful if, after being offered goddamn religion and then yada yada, indeed observations leading to this series on coming home, that and the Yahweh blog, that thousands of Israelites were to emerge from geographic Babylon to become part of the covenant family. We must now add acknowledged Jews living among the coastlines of the sea to this list. Now, the following list of nations, replete with their known Israelite populations, has been, well, something we're going to consider here so that we can calculate just how many Jews have the potential to be included in Yahweh's repatriation of his people and how that compares to the entire population. In Israel now, there are 7.4 million Jews. 7.4 million. The number is actually increasing fairly significantly within Israel. In the United States, the number of Jews living in Israel 2 years ago passed the number that live in the United States, but now the number that live in the United States appears to have reclaimed lead position, such that there are 7.6 million Jews living in the United States. Well, that's what, 15 million right on the nose between Israel and the United States. It goes way down from here. So I'll go over the numbers from the rest of the places where there are large populations near coastlines. France, 440,000. It's declining rapidly. Canada, 400,000, maintaining but in shock. United Kingdom also maintaining 300,000, but in absolute shock. In Russia, 130,000. This is actually just of the coastal population of Jews in Russia. It is declining, but not because of abuse there, but because of the fact that Russia is very open about allowing and encouraging the Jews that want to migrate to Israel to do so. And there is a huge community of Russian Jews in Israel. In Argentina, 170,000. This is declining despite the fact that the current leader of Argentina is pro-Israel. Germany, 90,000. Boy, that's sad. Now that's those that would be living along the Baltic coast. It is also declining rapidly. In Australia, which is a hotbed of Islamic hatred towards Jews, there is 115,000. In Brazil, 90,000. South America, or South Africa, and really the hellhole now of apartheid and genocide, there are 50,000, and that is declining very rapidly. In Ukraine, just of those that would be in the coastal regions, about 20,000. In Hungary, 45,000. Mexico, 45,000. Spain, 30,000. Belgium, 29. Netherlands, also 29. Italy, 30,000, declining rapidly, unfortunately. In Switzerland, 19,000. Chile, 15,000. Turkey, 17. Sweden, 15. Uruguay, 12. Belarus, there'll be a test on this. Wookiee's keeping track, so you're going to want to write these numbers down. Just kidding. Panama, 10. Romania, 9. Austria, 9. Iran, 9. Azerbaijan, 9. Poland, 7. Venezuela, 4,000. New Zealand, 7,000. Denmark, 6,000. Morocco, 6,000. Latvia, 6,000. Hong Kong, 5,000. India, Greece, and Colombia, between 4,000 and 5,000. And all other countries that have a Jewish population along the coastline to be 43,000. And so those that, by the definition that Yahweh has provided, that could be included in the list who are rescued and repatriated, you'd have 9.5 million. Those that could be partially included because a lot aren't presently along the coastlines, 240,000. Those mostly excluded because they're principally inland, 60,000, and completely excluded and not available to be rescued based upon this coastlands of the sea definition, 265,000. Well, that means that 97% of the known Israelite population in the diaspora can be repatriated and rescued by Yahweh based upon the list he has provided, or at the very least be given the opportunity to come home should they accept this offer. And even if 80% of the Jewish population chooses to remain in places that have a rising tide of anti-Semitism, such as those in Poland, Austria, Romania, Belarus, Hungary, and Ukraine, God is offering sanctuary in Israel to 99% of his people. This does not mean that Israel will be saved, far from it, but it will continue to endure the indignity of Islam and of socialist secular humanism, and it will ultimately prevail. And that is a place that God is willing to engage in the end to protect his people, and where he will have his two witnesses there to protect his people. So Jews will actually fare better in Israel than they will anywhere else on earth. That's why we will be there. Some will even live to see the return of Dowd, their Messiah and King, and that's reason enough to go. Well, I'm going to share one more statement from Yah's testimony, so we're at a place where we know we're going to pick up the story in episode 4 of this presentation on the Choter. So he will lift up this Nesh sign, signal, and banner for every ethnicity and all nations. Then he will gather together and remove the strain and scattered of Yisrael. And the dispersed of Yehuda he will gather up and obtain from the 4 extremities of the earth. Yashaya 11:12. It's a nice summation of what we have just read. I thank you for listening and for being part of this family where we are committed to sharing Yahweh's message with his people, reacquainting Yisrael with Yahweh and with Dowd, the actual Messiah, Son of God and Savior. May Yahweh bless you all. Good day.